Avoidant attachment response. Avoidant attachment response forms when children learn early that expressing needs brings no comfort, so they turn inward instead, growing up in environments where emotional unpredictability becomes the norm and they sense tension before words are spoken. The brain wires itself around safety, and for these individuals, safety lives in solitude. Adults praise them for being easy, calm, and no trouble, never seeing the loneliness beneath the quietness. This pattern doesn't fade with time. It becomes the foundation for how they navigate relationships, emotions, and the world itself. High sensitivity processing. High sensitivity processing. Some minds process the world more deeply than others, reacting intensely to noise, conflict, cluttered environments, and even subtle shifts in facial expressions. Studies on dopamine sensitivity show these brains don't crave constant social reward. Instead, their nervous systems thrive in quieter spaces where they can regulate without fighting overstimulation. When they step into noisy rooms, the volume rises inside their chest, not just around it. Their brains process emotional data deeply, thoroughly, sometimes painfully. This isn't imagination or weakness, it's perception operating at a different frequency than most people experience. Emotional absorption. Emotional absorption happens when someone doesn't just hear another person's tone, but absorbs it completely, picking up signals others miss entirely, like tension before anyone speaks, disappointment hiding behind smiles, and shifts in energy even when people perform happiness. This constant awareness becomes weight. Every gathering, conversation, and social interaction means carrying everyone else's emotions. Solitude becomes the only place where they can finally set this weight down, not as avoidance of people, but as creation of space to hear their own mind without interference from dozens of other emotional frequencies broadcasting simultaneously. Self-preservation through silence. Self-preservation through silence develops when individuals learn their needs are easier to carry inside than to express outward, as childhood teaches them that emotional worlds are theirs to handle alone, and they don't develop fear of others, but self-sufficiency born from experience. Their nervous systems learn safety comes from within, not validation. This becomes gentle but impenetrable armor. They move through social situations with quiet observation, feeling everything but revealing little. Others mistake this for shyness, aloofness, or indifference, but the truth is simpler. They've spent years learning how to protect the parts of themselves the world didn't know how to hold. Solitude as equilibrium. Solitude functions as equilibrium for minds that process reality at higher intensities. It's not loneliness. Loneliness occurs when connection feels impossible, but solitude occurs when connection finally happens, not with others, but with oneself. An hour of conversation can leave these individuals exhausted, while an hour alone stitches their spirit back together. Their brains need this recalibration the way others need social interaction. The nervous system settles, thoughts stop scattering like frightened birds, and everything becomes coherent again. This isn't withdrawal from life. It's the rebalancing required to participate in life without losing themselves in the process. Freedom from social constraints. Freedom from social constraints. The freedom found in solitude removes constraints present in all social engagements. As friends, family, and romantic partners represent what psychologists call structures of demands. Demands to be listened to with expected interest, cared for according to specific requirements, followed or led at certain paces. Jean-Paul Sartre explained, "When another person enters our awareness, we become objects in their consciousness." In solitude, these constraints vanish completely. No one bounds you on any side, and you're free to think, feel, and do exactly as you please, with no concern for meeting expectations or managing someone else's emotional temperature. Attunement to self. Attunement to self happens best in solitude's unrestricted environment, characterized by free flow, where thoughts, desires, and emotions enter awareness without censorship or management, revealing aspects of selfhood buried beneath social masks worn around others.
Ooh, I feel the
Novelist May Sarton wrote about returning to some deep self that had been too absorbed and battered to function. And philosopher Thomas Merton warned that when the deep inner voice of one's true self isn't heard, life becomes miserable and exhausting. Confronting inner conflicts. Confronting inner conflicts. The voices heard in solitude aren't always pleasant. Sometimes attunement to self involves reliving past traumas and the emergence of painful emotions, fears, and anxieties previously avoided through social distraction. As yearnings, rages, jealousies, dependencies, and estrangements surface with devastating intensity. These conflicts cause pain, yet their emergence opens opportunity. Silence helps process, resolve, and release them. Japanese physician Shoma Morita developed psychotherapy based on Zen Buddhism that provides patients complete solitude for up to a week with no distractions, left alone with their illness until they and their illness become one. Patients learn to accept their condition in complete solitude, healing chronic mental health problems. Society's worship of extroversion. Society's worship of extroversion. Modern society celebrates noise above silence, mistaking the loudest person for the most confident, successful, and alive. From childhood, people are taught that happiness looks a certain way. Crowded rooms, wide smiles, endless conversations, group photos with bright filters. Fulfillment requires visibility. Love requires accessibility. Success requires volume.
You guys, this is the best collab ever. Make sure you like and subscribe.
We need to optimize synergy.
Let's go. Woo! Feel the burn.
When someone chooses silence, solitude, or space, others assume something is wrong and treat inner life like a malfunction needing repair. This pressure exists everywhere. In hustle culture where rest equals laziness, in social media where worth ties to how often you display your life, in workplaces where speaking constantly is confused with thinking clearly. Historical value of solitude. Historical value of solitude. Throughout history, solitude wasn't weakness, but a path to clarity that noise could never provide. Monks walked alone through forests. Sages sat beneath ancient trees. Samurai trained in silence. Philosophers wrote by candlelight. Solitude was discipline, a form of understanding the world couldn't interrupt. The modern world forgot this, trading contemplation for consumption and silence for distraction, far from ancient wisdom. Among the Tarahumara Indians of Mexico's Sierra Madre, there existed almost a cult of solitude. 6-year-old boys would take their rations and disappear with sheep for 1 or 2 weeks without seeing another person. Becoming so accustomed to solitary lives, they felt embarrassed and lost when called to converse with others. If you're enjoying this content, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell. Rites of passage through solitude. Rites of passage through solitude. Solitary quests were integral parts of rites of passage in cultures worldwide. Adolescent boys transitioned to manhood through extended periods alone in wilderness, taken to secluded camps where they remained isolated, sometimes for months, making or finding everything needed to survive. They hunted, foraged, protected themselves from predators, faced fear of the unknown. Transforming minds from enemies into friends, only those succeeding in this solitary quest were considered real men. Ritual isolation introduced a central truth. No matter how tribal our social life, we are on the journey alone and must learn to draw strength and solace from within. The loneliness of self-containment. The loneliness of self-containment. The loneliness experienced by those who prefer solitude differs from typical loneliness. It's the loneliness of self-containment, of holding every emotion inside because they don't know how to place it in someone else's hands, appearing in unexpected moments like scrolling through phones late at night, seeing people together.
How are you really? We haven't seen you.
I'm good.
Watching others connect effortlessly while their own hearts have slow-moving gaits rusted from years of self-protection, there's a pull to join, a gentle tug from somewhere deep inside, but habit holds them in place. They tell themselves they're fine, they don't need it. Silence is where they thrive, but beneath these truths lies another. They want to be known, but they're terrified of being seen. Earned security. Earned security. Healing for those who find peace in solitude doesn't mean becoming more social or outward. It means reshaping solitude from shield into sanctuary. Psychology calls this earned security, the slow rebuilding of trust through consistent, gentle experiences.
Remember when we first sat here in the snow?
We've come a long way since then.
The brain learns that connection doesn't always mean danger, that vulnerability doesn't always lead to disappointment, rewiring from the inside out. They begin recognizing needs not as burdens but as truths, expressing them not perfectly but honestly. They learn that asking for help doesn't erase strength, that choosing companionship doesn't diminish love for solitude. Making room for connection. Making room for connection. Healing asks only to make room for a few meaningful threads of connection, woven carefully into solitude's fabric. No crowd is needed, no requirement to become loud or universally open. Just a few chairs inside the sanctuary instead of one, as solitude that once felt like armor begins feeling like home. A space to return to after experiencing the world.
I'm glad you convinced me to read this. It's wonderful.
One person who feels safe enough that the nervous system doesn't rush to build walls, someone who listens without pushing, understands without demanding, stays without crowding. Doors don't fling open, windows simply crack. For someone who spent years carrying everything alone, even that is an act of courage. The depth of quiet strength. The depth of quiet strength. There's beauty in being someone who feels more than they can explain, someone who has learned to sit with their own thoughts the way others sit with friends, someone who knows solitude is not emptiness but fullness, a place where the world's noise dims just enough to hear the truth they've been carrying all along. It takes quiet strength that doesn't demand recognition, the kind that grows like roots beneath the surface, holding everything together. They've spent years moving between two worlds, the outer world where people speak loudly and live quickly, and the inner world where everything breathes slower, softer. The gift of depth. The gift of depth. The depth inside them is not a flaw. It's their greatest gift. Neuroscience might call it sensitivity. Psychology might call it introspection. Philosophy might call it soul awareness. But they know it simply as themselves. The way their heart listens, the way their mind absorbs, the way they can sit in a room full of people and still hear their own thoughts. They are not silent because they have nothing to say. They are silent because they've learned to speak only when it matters. They are not alone because they cannot connect. They are alone because their spirit refuses to settle for surface-level living. Wisdom to understand. Wisdom to understand. In a world that demands noise, the quiet ones are the last keepers of depth. If they've ever felt different, distant, or misunderstood, they should remember this. Their solitude is not a weakness to outgrow, but a wisdom to understand, a sanctuary to protect, a compass pointing inward toward the parts of themselves that we're always waiting to be seen. As they step into the next chapter, they should carry this truth like a lantern in the dark. They are not alone in their silence. They are simply among the few who know how to hear the world without losing the sound of their own soul. If this video resonated with you, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon. Share your thoughts in the comments below.